Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach. And this podcast is all about embracing our Mosaic life. Now, some of you may ask, what is a Mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life, and I am your host. And I have a special guest that I'll introduce in just a moment. But before I do, I would love to ask you to do me a solid, and that's leave a comment. Remember also to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. And this gentleman right here is Oswald Perez. And we actually know each other from being in a Facebook group together that has been so enlightening with all the things that we're doing in there. But he's actually come to, for those that aren't aware, I have been doing these stand up and stand out parties where a bunch of people come together. We talk about a little bit about who we are, and we're kind of like practicing our elevator speech and talking about things that we're concerned about when introducing ourselves. And he has been a guest a couple of times. I actually introduced his poetry book, so I'm going to ask him about that. But before I do, just really quick, Oswald, can you just tell everybody just a touch about you, and then we'll get into some questions.
Well, thank you, Vicky. Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everybody. My name is Oswald Perez, aka OP Writer. I am a writer and a poet who lives in New York City.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, did you grow up in New York City?
I'm a New Yorker born and raised.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Georgia born and raised, and every time I tell somebody that, they say, "You're still living the same place where you grew up?" So you did the same thing, right? You're still at least in the same state, whether you're in the same actual
Yeah,
area or not.
I'm actually still in the same part of New York City. I live in Queens.
Okay. So what's since you've lived there your whole life, what's your favorite place? If somebody were to visit you from out of town, what's the one place that you would want to take them to let them know what the New York flavor would be?
Well, if it were me, so not far from where I live. I'm literally in the shadow of LaGuardia Airport
Hmm.
from where I am. So if we walk a few blocks, there's a park well, first there's the College of Aeronautics first, and then a little further from that there's a park where if you can see across the expressway, you'll see the planes taking off and coming in for the landing. Like depending on where in the neighborhood you like, the closer you get to the roadways that lead towards Astoria, the better your views of the planes up in the skies above are.
Hmm. So have you always been fascinated with planes?
I have I guess it comes with the fact that I live in the shadow of one airport and am a drive away from the major international airport, JFK. I'm not far away from that either. It's like every time I see like the welcome sign, it always feels like the welcome sign to JFK.
Hmm.
I always seem to perk up, no matter how how everything else is going, or like how crappy the weather is outside. I'll see the welcome sign and I immediately perk up.
Ah, nice. You need to have a picture of that on your phone if you don't already, so you can see it whenever you need it.
I know, like I surprisingly like I guess because of the fact that there's no way to like get a solid stop, like you just keep
Mm,
driving. So that I'm afraid that like that's a bit difficult to do. But I'm
yeah.
always the one that like you'll see me in the airport terminal like snapping away at the planes on the tarmac while I'm waiting for to board the flight.
So when you were
So
really
that's
young,
close enough.
were you fascinated with the planes then too? Did you ever think about being a
Yeah,
pilot? Was that ever one of your
I
dreams?
funnily enough, it was like I wanted to be an airline pilot
Mm-hmm.
as a kid. Like I guess back then I thought, oh, it was going to be the only way I would be able to travel and see the world back then as a kid. Like
Ah,
I didn't realize that, oh, I can be able to save enough money. I can afford to I can afford to travel around the world. I don't necessarily have to learn how to fly to be able to fly.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of those things that a lot of times we think we have to create this um structure of a profession that allows us to do certain things like the travel, right? And so that's why some people become pilots and flight attendants, or they get jobs that they're located all over the world so they can travel. But man, oh man, it's so much more rewarding when you can just travel for the fun of it, right?
Exactly. It's there's no like there's not much else in life that gives me the same kind of thrill that being in being in the plane the moment it takes off, and especially in the evenings, the New York skyline is lit up
Hmm.
before the plane eventually reaches cruising altitude. You get to see New York in lights, or on the way back home, you see you see Manhattan and Queens as the flight descends back into the airport. You get to see all. I mean, how for example, back in earlier this month, my sister and I took a trip to Newport, Rhode Island, and we were landing at LaGuardia Airport. I kid you not, our flight was directly over the USTA National Tennis Center as the US Open was going on.
Wow, nice.
It was like that's the one time where it's like, why didn't that's like the one time I regret not having the window seat. Or like I should have handed my camera over to my sister to get the photos from for the view up there.
Yeah,
Like
you
you
should
can't beat
have.
that.
Well, do you have other siblings or just the one sister?
No, just the one.
Just the one?
We're actually twins.
Oh, so do you look alike?
Yeah, she we're twins, and no, we don't. She's the older.
Mm-hmm.
We're
So
fraternal twins.
yeah, well, I figured you'd be fraternal because one's male and one's female. The thing is that some twins, even though they're different sex, that you can definitely tell that they are twins because they have so many similarities. So, do you
I mean,
guys
like
look pretty close together, or are you very different? I know
cl
I've seen some that they didn't even look like they were siblings.
we cl we look close. Like unless like you we do we do look close, but we're completely different, like personality wise.
Mm-hmm. So, what's different about you guys?
For example, for one thing, like the thing is, I have cerebral palsy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like because we were the thing was we were both born premature.
Okay.
I don't like funny things you can't tell like from one who which which child is gonna get any if any and all any and all like difficulties that come from being born premature. You can't really tell until like well after child well into childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I have cerebral palsy.
So, how old were you when you were diagnosed with cerebral palsy?
I know I was diagnosed very young.
Hmm.
The first I have multiple I've had multiple complications that came up as a result of
Oh,
it.
hmm.
For like I for example, the left I can't the left eye is blurred vision. Like I can make a big outline. If I cover the eye, I can vaguely see where I'm at, barely. I am most profound. Like I have the slate speech, speech issues, and most profoundly, my legs were born deformed. That was like the area where it affected me the most.
Hmm. So they make it could tell that like right after birth, maybe that part.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
could because I started having surgeries early in my life.
Okay. So was it your feet or your legs?
It was primarily primarily my legs. It
Okay.
was my legs.
And you had surgery, so that became better, right?
Multi Multiple surgeries
Mm-hmm.
over the years. Only into the last one in 2001 did everything finally everything finally was resolved after about three separate surgeries before that.
Yeah.
And t on the right leg, I had two surgeries the last time around by itself.
Mm. So, but it feels good now?
It does. On my own on my own 2 feet. I mean, yeah, I'm not as quick as I used to be, and yeah, I can't be on my feet for too many periods of time,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm willing to at least give it a go. Case in point, last year I took a 14-day trip to Greece,
Oh,
and there were
nice.
several points for example, climbing up the Acropolis to reach the Parthenon. My sister bought me the pair of hiking sticks for my birthday last year.
Mm.
So I was able to navigate the crowds and the uneven terrain with my sticks. Ditto for the Messina later in the trip. So it's just a matter of adapting to. I mean, I'm gonna give it a go. If I have to find my way to adapt to situations, I reached that point in my life where it's I'm not gonna let my limitations necessarily stop me from doing things.
I love that. I love that. And because, there are so many people that have little things about their lives that stop them. And see you, because I've seen you in these groups and things. And so you would never know that there was anything wrong with you. I mean, or that
I
was
That's
wrong with
because
you. Pardon?
because I have the mild version of cerebral palsy.
Okay.
So the level of how it affects you it it affects everyone differently. I ended up
Mm-hmm.
having the mild version of it. Unless you know what to look out for, you might see me and think there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with everybody thinking there's nothing wrong either.
Exactly.
It's nice, right? Because one of
Yeah.
the things that I have a niece that has muscular dystrophy, so she's in a wheelchair, and her muscles are all the time um, getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And one of the things that drives her crazy is because everybody can see there's something wrong with her. She's in this electric wheelchair. Um, and but the thing that is mind-boggling is that a lot of people, like if we're with her and people walk up and they want to ask her a question, they don't ask her, they ask us, like she's not intelligent
Ah,
enough
yeah,
to answer a question.
right.
And so, to me, it's a big deal when you see someone, even if you're not even sure, what the issue is, but you want to always be respectful,
Exactly.
and just speak to them, because that's one of the things that bothers her the most, is that people will talk to the people around her instead of her. And
But
we're
not
always the one to
directly.
say, ask her. She can speak, ask
Right.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. And I love that you are demonstrating that no matter what's going on, that you can figure out a way to make it work. Because, that's a gift that you have. And you're showing people all the time that don't just
I
stop, figure
mean,
out how to
don't
work
get
around it.
don't get me wrong. Like I'm by no means I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
None of us
I
are.
would like I don't have all the skills per se to be an adult. And I admit like some of it's like my own like intransigence on my own somewhat laziness on my own. Some of it's my own laziness, some of it's the hand-eye coordination isn't exactly like it's a little makes things a little bit more difficult. Going back to the Greece trip, like one of the things we did, the Greek
Was it you
cooking
and your sister
lesson.
that went?
No, I went by myself.
Okay.
So regarding that,
Yeah.
since 2015, I've taken I've always joined the group joined group escorted group tours
Okay.
since 2015. Solely only the reason being because of that, like go back to 2015, it was around her 30th birthday. I find out that she's going to Hawaii, and despite my noblest of efforts, it wasn't gonna happen. It was girls only. Despite all my effort, but instead of me being upset about it, the next thing I asked her was like I wanted to travel on because it's a milestone birthday. Like I had to do something a little bit bigger for it. So I asked her like I want to travel on my own. Like, what do you suggest? And that's where the whole idea of joining escorted tour groups came along. And every year since 2015, usually around this time of year, I take that trip. So, like I focused on the European continent for now.
Yeah. So where was the first one you went to by yourself?
Spain, Spain in 2015 in Spain.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
It
I'm kind of jealous
was.
here because I haven't been there.
I had a good time. I made the mistake of not extending the trip to the two extra days. It was 8 days at first, but they had the 10-day version of it, and I, in my not so infinite wisdom, decided to stick with the shorter trip. And there I am sitting on the flight home to Madrid, not exactly in a happy camper to be flying back to New York because I'm like I could have like picked 2 extra days to go to Barcelona, but
Yeah.
I was determined the next year's trip. I was back in Spain. I started the trip in Barcelona that time. The next time round.
Yeah. So when you were a little kid and you and your sister were in school, was there a specific teacher or something when you were in school that inspired you and helped you the most?
Well, first, like my sister and I, like went to separate school. Have only at the like in day school were we in the same school together.
Okay.
After that, we we've been on our own separate path.
Okay.
We went separate paths ever since. As far as like teachers will that like not that I can remember specifically that was
Mm-hmm.
like willing to like that was like mentor to that effect.
Okay.
Not that I can
That's okay.
not that I
That's okay.
can yeah.
I was just thinking that that might be something cool to talk about if there was. So, what do you think has been the biggest influence on you as far as maybe a person or something you've read or something that has
My
given you that influence
that's
of looking at the
that's
bright side of
that's
life
an
and doing the things that you want to do?
that's an easy one.
Okay.
That's an easy one. My sister is my biggest influence.
Okay. What's your sister's name?
Her name is Natalie.
Natalie? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
cool. We need to meet Natalie at some point. So, did she encourage you to write your poetry?
When it comes to the poetry, that's the whole that one I kind of found that one a bit on my own. Like
Okay.
initially, it was as a kid, like I would write messages into my parents, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and separate birthday cards.
Okay.
Again, I had no idea that it was considered poetry. I was just
You were
writing
just writing.
something.
Yeah.
I was just writing. I didn't know like it would be considered poetry by any stretch.
But you loved doing it, I imagine.
Yeah, I, I, I like doing it.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
just I guess I couldn't like I don't know. It just didn't feel right. Just like communicating like the normal like a normal like note like type of didn't feel like me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did you get to the place where I know you've got this poetry book out now? And so, when did you start writing that? Do you remember?
Well, first here's the book.
Yay. A
I
poetic
kind of knew like I had
journey.
it here on
What is the
my
name? What
the
is the name again? A
poetic
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 journey
journey staying at
staying at
home.
home. Okay.
So for the poetic journey, we have to go back to 2020. It was it was that spring in the heart of the COVID pandemic, the point where it's like here in New York it got really bad to the point where it's like ambulances were wailing not seemingly nonstop. There
Hmm.
was the photos of like the morgue trucks, morgue trucks, lockdowns, the whole 9 yards. And at the time, I was furloughed from my previous employment. Like everything snowballed really quickly. Like we were going from like planning the organization's signature fundraiser that April to less than 3 weeks. The entire thrift shop arm of the business was completely shut down.
Yeah.
So I I did not exactly take this well. Like I remember that day, I come downstairs like after I got the announcement on Zoom, my mom and my sister downstairs, and they saw it in my eyes. What I was about to say was not good news, and I ended up crying my eyes out
Oh,
because I was not because it was like everything had like suddenly imploded.
yeah.
Like I wasn't prepared to like be out of work for like I think although they brought us all back in July of that year, it was almost 4 months without. out of the job for 4 months, and the writing comes in because this coincides with the very end of Made to Do This. Like
Mm-hmm.
9 weeks in was that moment of awakening that led me to the current path that I'm on right now. Yet I still felt like I was only getting started at the very end, and I needed to have something to show for all the effort and all the money that I put into those 12 weeks. I needed to show something. And the fact that I was furloughed, I had all the time in the world now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before this, I I bear like every so often, I was able to like get poems and writings out on Instagram. Now I had all the time in the world. At least at the time, I had all the time in the world.
Right. So, how did you feel as you began writing all of this down? Was it things that you had already written some of them and then you just elaborated on them more, or did you write them all during that time?
It all came together during that time.
Okay.
The poem Awakening happened the morning after the hot seat. Like I just like so was still on that high, and I wrote it that morning and posted it not long after we were told that the operations were ceasing. So that's kind of where it begins.
Yeah, yeah. So we were talking a little bit before we got on here, and you spoke about the hot seat, but nobody that's listening or watching right now knows what you're talking about. So maybe tell a little bit about what you're
Okay,
referring to when you're talking about the hot seat.
sure. So back in from January to April of 2020, I signed up for the author and business coach Kathy Heller's 12-week program Made to Do This. Essentially, in those 12 weeks, you're able to get started on whatever business idea you had. And every week we had the weekly Zoom call
Mm-hmm.
on Sundays. It was alternating between Sunday afternoons and Sunday nights. And you would get homework assigned to you at the end of each call. So if you're doing the homework, you had the chance to be in the hot seat, which is essentially a one-on-one conversation with Kathy, with the rest of the group watching it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened on the night of March 22nd, 2020.
All right. Well, tell us what that was like.
Oh boy, I like the moment she announced my name. I guess she must have taken a liking to me
Uh-huh.
because the guy was not intending t to to sign up for the program in the first place. I thought to myself, there was no way. I mean, it's a business course. Me as a writer, how is this going to help me?
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, on the day the program started, literally at like 3:30 p.m. that day, she personally emailed me saying, I have a partial scholarship offer for someone didn't want to take it. You showed I must have left my mark on her 5-day challenge that preceded this. She offered me the partial scholarship, and like there I am, like checking my email because I went to the New York Times travel show at the Javits Center that day. There I am, like I see it, and it's like, okay, this is not the usual form email that automated email that comes. This is Kathy personally reaching out to me with this offer.
Well,
I
how did
thought,
that feel to
Thursday,
get that
okay,
email?
I needed to decide quickly because if I, thankfully I caught it when I did,
Mm-hmm.
because if I like put my phone back in my pocket, I would have missed it and like or like taken a look at my email like later in the evening, I would have missed it and the last 4 years would be completely different had I not been paying attention.
Yeah, yeah. It's that intuition that guided you to look at your email when you did,
And
right?
I didn't even know like back then I didn't even know like intuition even existed. Like I just saw that like just happened to have the camera on my phone, was photographing my way through the event, and then I just happened to check my email. There, the email was.
And so you obviously decided to do the program. So how did you end up on that hot seat?
Yeah, it was purely by like I was doing the homework.
Okay.
That's
So that's a
and Kathy.
clue for everybody that's watching or listening. Do the homework, right?
Yeah. So anyway, like Kathy calls my name. She's ecstatic. The Zoom chat blows up. Every like I could see all the congratulations from everybody. Meanwhile, I have this stricken look on my face. I'm like, oh no, this is not gonna. I can see the disaster coming from like a mile away. I have to like find some way to get myself out of this because I'm gonna like make a complete fool of myself in front of everyone, and I'm not gonna be able to live it down. But as things were, like, had a pair of friends messaging me at the same time, reminding me that Kathy called my name, and with a little technical difficulty delaying everything, I was able to at least like stop panicking and just be able to explain what I was trying to do. And in the midst of the conversation, that's where the mantra words are art, where your words are art.
Hmm.
That's where the whole thing came from. Like not long after that, I downloaded Canva, and the next morning I had my first piece ready to be posted, not knowing
Nice.
everything, not knowing that everything else would go sideways in less than a week
What do you mean? What happened?
because Monday operations ceased. Friday we all got the furlough. We got
Okay, I
furloughed.
gotcha.
So it's like you go from like cloud nine on the Sunday to crashing the earth on a Friday.
Yeah, yeah. So when you were taking the class from her, it was before COVID actually really cranked up. So
Yeah,
you were already wanting to
yeah.
do this poetry. Is that why you signed up with her? Because you had the idea for the poetry then?
You know, when it comes to, I signed up because I, when it comes to me, like I don't invest in myself only in my travels. At the time, I had a 12-day trip to Italy booked for later that year. Was part of the reason why I did not sign up for me to do this right away because it's like I already spent a chunk of money on the down payment for the Italy trip and this. I'm not going to be able to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
But of course, like not expecting that things would be not expecting the string of serendipity that would eventually follow, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you said that you, after the hot seat, the next day is when you created your first poem?
Yeah,
Yeah. So maybe
yeah.
tell us about how that happened. I mean, how did you just all of a sudden start writing this poem?
It, I don't know. I couldn't sleep that the night before. I guess I was still like running on the sheer adrenaline of like, okay, something big just happened to me, and I'm like still running. I'm still basking in the afterglow of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, that's like so finally something clicked after so long. Like I had my moment of awakening right then and there, and that's how it that's how it began.
Yeah. So you have your book there with you. So do you want to read us that
Yeah,
first poem that you wrote?
1 second.
I'd love to hear the poem that started it all.
Sure, I'm just trying to get back to the page,
No
page in
worries,
here
no
that
worries. Take
has
your
it.
time.
Ah, here we go.
Okay.
I got it. Awakening. The moment when everything clicks, when one realizes what's been hiding underneath all along. The sense of potential is unleashed, working up the nerve to take it forward, to see the road up ahead. The path forward is getting clearer, even if the ultimate destination is still unknown. I'm ready. I'm ready for what's next.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. So that definitely was a beginning because you can tell it in there. It's like you're declaring right then that the world is my oyster and I'm going to take advantage of all of the opportunities ahead of me, right?
Yes, and with a little bit of a nod to U2's song Zoo Station from the 1991 album Octoon Baby, at the very end of it, that's the first words that come out of Bono's first lyrics you hear,
Mm-hmm.
with a little bit of a nod, with a little bit of nod, musical nod. Like when it comes to music, it often ends up being the of major source of inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what has been the most exciting about actually having your book out and people are buying it now? So what's the most
It's
exciting
just
thing?
it's just been the fact that the poems are out in the world. Like case in point, last Friday afternoon, Stacey Lauren, she's doing the Find Your Voice challenge, which I initially joined in back in January.
Mm-hmm.
But Stacey being the persuasively positive person that she is,
Yes.
I could I could not like it felt like there was no way I was gonna like get away with like no way I was gonna be able to get out of like going through it again.
Right.
So last Friday afternoon was the kickoff call for the challenge, and at the very I was watching it from my office because I my lunch break was not until 1 o'clock. Was still working, but I had the call on screen, and then she bought a copy of the book, which I couldn't believe it that she did that. And then I see the page that I just read from Awakening. Took a photo of the poem and used as part of the call too. So it's like, oh my God, what have I done? I know it's weird that I don't know when it comes to positive attention, it feels uncomfortable, honestly. Like I not like it feels weird to
Mm-hmm.
have praise and positivity be like I'll like give it to like everything and everyone else in spades, whereas sends it my direction, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like
You
it just
know,
feels weird.
it's because you're so good at being a giver, just not a good receiver. So that's something that going through this process, will help you to become a good receiver over time. But you'll feel so good when you can have someone say something about your poems or about you, and you can just say, "Oh, thank you," and it just feels good. So it'll get less awkward as time
and
goes
I
on.
don't and I don't like and I don't blush like multiple shades of red whenever like anyone like reads my stuff back to me, or like whenever like my dad like pretty much like letting the entire his side of his family who live in Cuba know about this, or like him like letting his colleagues at his job know about this.
Oh, how
Like
cool
it's
is
like
that? Yeah,
it is, and it's like it's surreal.
yeah. Well, I love that you have such a good support system that they're telling everybody about your poems and being proud of you. That's amazing.
It is like and I'm grateful to the ends of the earth for it. Like
Yeah.
like even though the fact that like a good chunk of it, everyone's like there are like distances, like time, different parts of the world are involved, and it just still like brings me all the joy to like know that like the support system is there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your goal from here? Are you looking to do another book of poetry?
I have this slight this idea had this idea in my head where I have four different poetry books, all based on the seasons of the year.
Mm.
So right now, the one that I have now would be spring.
Mm-hmm.
I have a second book that's coming in the near future, summary based
Okay.
poems that's coming out should be coming out in the near future, and hopefully within the next year or two I get myself in gear to get the third and fourth books in the series out into the world to complete the four seasons.
I love it. I love it. So maybe once you get all four of them up and published and out there, then you can create like a thing where people can buy all four books as a season little kit. You know,
Yeah,
that would be really
the
cool.
box set. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's what I
box
was
set.
thinking
Yeah,
of, the box set. Yeah. Yeah.
that is eventually like down the line. That's what I hope to have happen down the line. That I'd be able to have the box set with all four books in the same place.
Yeah. It sounds amazing, and I know you'll do it. I know you'll do it. You're a very determined man, so I think you'll do
Tr
just fine.
the Trust me, the determination hasn't come easy. It's something that I've had to sometimes learn the hard way to pick up.
You mean that you're trying to be more disciplined, that you spend so much time writing? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, or it's more like I like just a general sense of discipline, like in life, period. Like more in life, much sort of like the writing seems to be like the one area that tends to be more disciplined than like everything
Mm-hmm.
else. And even then, it's like I often need to like have some sort of inspiration or like to like be able to go forward. It doesn't always come easy there either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, inspiration sometimes comes from just relaxing and being in nature, doing something that has nothing to do with it. And then all of a sudden the wheels start turning. I mean, a lot of us get our best
Ex
ideas when we're doing something else.
exactly. For example, like I'll be waiting, waiting for the bus to go to work in the morning, and if like some sort of idea like pops in my head, I'll open the notes app on my iPod and just like start on something. Like more often than not, the poems that you see, uh, poems that you see are more or less what you get. Like I try not to edit too heavily. I
Yeah.
mean, like I'll revisit pieces from time to time, but I don't want to be like I don't want to edit them so much that it kind of like root kind of like takes their spirit away.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you in that. I feel you in that for sure. So we're getting close to time. So one of the things I want to say is that, for one thing, thank you so much for being here, Oswald. It's been such a
Thank you for
pleasure to
having
get to
me.
know you a little bit better. But I know when we had talked about having you on the podcast, I don't know if there was something that in your mind that you wanted to make sure that you said while you were on the podcast. Is there anything that you wanted to speak about that I haven't asked you about?
Um, I mean, not specifically. It's just the fact that like I admit like I was sort of nervous about like I guess the fact that like I kept mentioning the fact that the speech like the speech impediment might be a bit of an issue. Like I just wanted to like the fact that like this where I'm like kind of going in like many different directions,
Yeah.
like just trying to trying to stay on message or like trying to like try to keep focus would not get in the way.
I feel you. Well, there's so many reasons that when I'm doing this and I'm talking, I get where I'm talking about something and I lose total track about what I was talking about. So, it happens, right? And it's no big deal. And I think the fact that you have this, um, you called it what a speech impediment, but it feels to me like it
Yeah.
is a beautiful way to listen to you closer. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's what kind of like that's why I kind of say like when it comes to my writing, it seems to like come out a bit clearer than it does when I speak and speak to people. It's just trying to like I keep like I go from like where it's starts, stops, and like yeah, where it just starts and stops.
Yeah. Well, I think it's perfect. So don't change anything.
Thank you.
So, um, I want to again say thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure. And I'm going to end with my favorite quote that I always end with, and I still don't know who said this quote, and I promise at some point I'm going to figure it out. But it's the best way to predict the future is create it. And I love this quote because it seems like every single person I have on my podcast has created their future, you included. And so it just really comes from my heart as I say that to you, that the best way to predict the future is create it. And I love what you're creating.
Thank you. I it's taken quite a road to get to this point, and there are days where like I wonder like what exactly am I doing? Like what am I doing and what's the point of it all? There have been like that's always the question in the back of my head,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm doing the best I can. Like I this one thing that like I know that I have I have to give.
Yeah.
I mean, like I aside from the fact like I'll be like everyone's like biggest su support supporter, like be help when I can.
Mm-hmm.
too. Like I
Well, I will say in the community that I know you from, we all appreciate you. So just know that, okay?
thank you. And
You're
thank you for
welcome.
having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And so, for everybody that's watching or listening, I will have in the description, I will have the link to Oswald's book and any places that he wants to be able to connect with you. So just look in the description and all of the information will be there. So, we will go ahead and say goodnight. Mwah.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night.